So, about 6 years ago, I was 21 and I was home from college for the summer and living with my parents. This is deep Texas suburbia, so the houses are all cookie cutter houses built around the same time by the same developer. Every few blocks, there's a pool or a park of some sort. Well, every year, the community people, I honestly don't know how this gets organized or by whom, have an event called Rock the Park at one of the pools, within walking distance of my house. Some old guys bring their garage band and cover songs of Aerosmith and the Eagles, etc. The pool stays open late. There's a playground and you can hear the music from every corner of the park. It wasn't too loud though, unless you were nice and close. Well, my parents went on a dinner date that night, so I decided, with my 21-year-old brain, to pour some vodka into my Coca-Cola bottle and walk up the park for some tunes and a good time. It's only about a block away from me, so I get there pretty quick and down a good amount of vodka Coke along the way. I'm feeling pretty good by the same time I get there, so I head right up to the closest bench to the stage. They were just standing within some cones and speakers on the grass. There was a person sitting on the far edge of the bench, but I don't really pay attention to him at first. There's a good 4 feet of empty bench between us. It didn't take long, however, for him to strike up a conversation. He had a bony face and looked like to be at least 30. He said hello, how are you, etc. I was pull it back, but pulled out my phone to fuck around so he might get the message that I don't really want to talk. He asks if I'm having a good time, and me, like a fool, I tell him of course I am. I'm a couple shots worth of vodka. I shook my Coke bottle and the small amount left in it fizzed. That was when he started to ease his way in. I stayed on the far edge of the bench, but as he kept talking to me, he kept moving closer. He asked if I lived around there, and I said yeah. I honestly thought he was asking that because I was not sober enough to drive. He told me he lived in some vague direction, then asked me if he could have my number. I started getting uncomfortable because for the first time in my life, I was alone somewhere in a compromised state. I told him I didn't know him that well, and he said something like, "Okay, well, get to know me then." I told him I needed to walk around because the music was too loud and I had to make a phone call. I ventured to the other side of this large playground equipment with lots of climbable walls and tubes. I make sure he can't see me, but I know he watched where I went. I texted a bunch of my friends from college, telling them what was going on and asking for advice. They told me to leave, but I knew he could see me and I didn't want him to follow. I started hitting up my friends from high school, hoping that some might be home for summer already. And luckily, one of my friends was. I told her what was happening and asked if she could come save me. She said she could, but she couldn't make it for another 20 to 30 minutes, which was still well before the event ended. I went over to a different part of the playground, where the swings were, and took a seat there, where I could see the stage, hoping maybe he'd forget about me and leave me alone. Sure enough, the moment I sit, he's approaching the swings. He takes the one next to me and starts trying to be like, "What did you want to know about me? What do you need to know?" I was like, "Actually, I'm getting really tired and probably going home soon. I just want to enjoy the music a bit longer without talking." That was when he became adamant about walking me home. It was a suggestion at first, but the more I told him no and that I'd be fine, the more aggressive he got about it. My parents wouldn't be home for a few hours, so if I did go home and he followed, he'd know where I live and have me alone. He asked which direction I lived in, and I pointed in the opposite direction of my parents' house. He got up and took away a few steps in that direction. He turned back to me like he expected me to follow. I told him I wasn't ready to go home, but it became very clear that if I was walking home that night, he's coming whether I wanted him to or not. He stayed near me for the next 10 minutes or so until my friend arrived. I saw her car pull up and immediately got to my feet like, "Hey, that's my friend," and I sped off towards her car. She parked and got out and started heading back towards the park, and I was like, "No, hey, we gotta go now." But it was too late. He followed me and touched my shoulder. He said, "Hey, wait, you promised me to give me your number." I hadn't, but I felt rather trapped and figured that if I gave him a fake number, he'd be satisfied enough to let me leave. Sure enough, after I gave him the fake number, he calls it and starts looking at my phone, expecting it to ring. That's when my friend goes, "Hey, Thoris! Didn't your phone die?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. I'll get you later, man. Text me." And I waved him, and we both sped walked back to our car. He didn't follow, but he watched us drive away. I told her to go in the opposite way of my house, and to take the long way around.